Now, we've already given you some demonstrations on using file encryption and talked about network encryption, but what I'd like to do is give you some practical tips, some more information about using file encryption and network encryption in your everyday life. First of all, as far as file encryption goes, some good best practices include: don't encrypt everything. Only encrypt the information that you need to keep private or confidential. The reason I say this is that encrypting everything adds a significant workload to you. It gives you a significant overhead, because if you encrypt all these files, some of them you may not need to have encrypted, but now you have to keep up with them and remember decryption keys and passwords and so forth. So only encrypt the things you really need to. Maybe a file that has all of your passwords stored on it, or a file that has your credit card information on it. Only encrypt those things as far as file level encryption goes, or emails or whatever. Don't encrypt everything. Don't encrypt your entire family photo album. When you use file level encryption, use a program that has strong algorithms and that can use strong keys. Now, we've already seen some examples of some programs that use strong algorithms. Windows EFS uses a fairly strong algorithm. TrueCrypt definitely uses some strong algorithms, such as AES. And IronKey, unfortunately, IronKey is a very good program, but it's limited to a very weak algorithm, DES, the Data Encryption Standard, and that's an old standard from several years ago. So while IronKey is great for a demonstration of how this technology works, I don't know if I would recommend using something like that in your everyday life unless DES is okay with you, unless you are fairly certain no one is going to snoop on your private information. But also, when you're using these programs, regardless of algorithm strength, also use strong keys. Don't just use a 1 or 2 letter password. Use a very complex password, because complex passwords and complex keys are very difficult to crack. Now, you should back up encrypted files as well as other important unencrypted data to separate media, to tape or to CD-ROM or whatever, just in case, because encryption does not protect against data loss. It protects data confidentiality. It does not help you out if your hard drive crashes or if someone steals your hard drive. As far as the different file encryption technologies we've talked about, understand that there are many different technologies and many different programs out there that you can use to encrypt data while it's in storage, while it's on the file system. We've given you just a few examples, such as Windows EFS, TrueCrypt, IronKey, and so forth. We'll briefly cover a few things about each of those. First of all, use Windows EFS if you have a Windows computer, of course. Windows EFS won't help you on a Linux or a Mac computer, unfortunately. But use Windows EFS for what it's intended to be used for. Just files simply stored on a Windows box that you're going to protect against other people who may be using the box and may be accessing those files. Okay, Windows EFS has to be stored on or used with Windows NTFS formatted drives. If you have a FAT32 formatted drive, NTF or EFS will not work. Now, you don't have to stick with a uniquely Windows solution. You can use something like TrueCrypt, and TrueCrypt can be used on regular hard drives, but it can also be used with portable media such as USB memory stick or something like that. But you can encrypt the entire drive, or you can encrypt a small portion of the drive called an encrypted volume, and then you store files in this encrypted volume. Now, the example we gave for file level encryption, for standalone file level encryption, was IronKey. And although it doesn't have a very strong algorithm, it's a good example of a program that you can use as in a standalone way. You can encrypt a file by itself, send it to someone over the network. You don't have to have network encryption involved in this, so this is a way around that. So you send the encrypted file to someone, they can install it and actually just open it using a password. They don't have to install any additional programs. So it basically makes your encrypted files portable, that you can send them across networks and so forth. Now, as far as network encryption goes, often network encryption is done transparently behind the scenes. Normally, we don't get involved in that. But there are some things you probably need to know about it. First of all, if you're going to be sending confidential data or financial data or things like that, or you're logging into a site, make sure it's SSL enabled. Don't just log into a site that has the HTTP prefix. Make sure it has HTTPS, because that indicates that it's a secure site. So use those. Try to favor those sites that use that for financial transactions and so forth. As far as session and link encryption goes, session encryption is better for an individual, whereas link encryption might be better for a government or a small company. Session encryption only encrypts parts of a session or just a single session. It doesn't encrypt the entire link. Some sessions could be encrypted, others may not. Some parts of a session could be encrypted, only the parts that are needed, such as when the password is transmitted across the wire or when the credit card number is transmitted across the wire. Link encryption, as we've seen, can be very expensive, and there's different ways to do it. You can use hardware devices, which not everybody has access to, or you can use IPsec to provide some kind of inexpensive link encryption. Keep in mind that IPsec can affect network performance, so really only use it when you need it. Only encrypt certain protocols, for example, or traffic between two certain computers. Maybe you have a secure financial server, and any traffic that goes back and forth to it should be encrypted, but not between any other computer. So use IPsec selectively. Now, these are just a few of the good practices and tips that I can tell you for using file and network encryption. And of course, there are others out there. But use it, and use it wisely to protect your data whenever you can.